Recently, I had a conversation with a friend about professional wrestling, and the conversation of the GOAT came up. And this is one of the videos that I have wanted to make for some time, and now I think it's the best time to really dive into this conversation. But before we do that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and put the bell on for all notifications that are on my channel. And now, let's get into it. The professional wrestling GOAT does not exist. There is no such thing as the greatest of all time. I even typed into ChatGPT, what is and who is the greatest of all time in professional wrestling? It gave me 6 names: Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Undertaker, and John Cena, in that specific order. Now, there is an argument to be had for every one of those characters and wrestlers to be named as one of the best to ever do it. But just like in basketball, just like in hockey, just like in soccer, just like in every other sport on the planet, things change when it comes to all those different sports, and it also comes to professional wrestling as well. I have never been a fan of the conversation of who's the greatest of all time, because that can't be broken down. It's who's the greatest wrestler, who's the greatest sports entertainment, who's the longest reigning champion, who did it the best, who were they wrestling against, what was everything going on in the world helping to push this certain character or this certain athlete. I love the conversation of who's the greatest basketball player of all time. Is it LeBron? Is it Kobe? Is it Jordan? Well, none of those guys played against each other. Well, don't get me wrong. Kobe and LeBron played against each other, but LeBron never played against Jordan. Kobe had this, I believe, his first little run in the NBA when Jordan was on his way out, but the game was different back then when Jordan played. It's the same when it comes to Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, John Cena, and Roman Reigns. John Cena and Roman Reigns cross paths, but John Cena and Hogan never really cross paths, and Hogan never crossed paths with Bruno Sammartino. Back when Bruno Sammartino was the longest reigning professional wrestling champion in the world, he ran for 4 to 7 years, wasn't it? But wrestling was different then. It was Madison Square Gardens. Bruno Sammartino was the main attraction and defending his title in every match he was going up against. You look at Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns ran for 1,316 days, but only defended his title, 30 plus times, maybe less? The divisions and everything has changed when it comes to professional wrestling. So how are you going to argue who the greatest of all time is? John Cena was the one that carried professional wrestling when a lot of people stopped watching professional wrestling. If it wasn't for Stone Cold Steve Austin, WWE might have never survived the Attitude Era. The Rock is one of the greatest to ever do it, but also help promote the product outside of professional wrestling. The Final Boss run that he's on right now is kind of the coolest thing we've ever seen The Rock do, but he doesn't need a title to do it. It's just The Rock. He's bigger than any title right now. So having the argument of who is the GOAT really just does not draw up a lot of reasonable argument. And this is one of the biggest arguments in professional wrestling. Like, why have it? We can have greatest of a generation. My generation, the greatest of all time, was probably Stone Cold or The Undertaker. If we talk about other generations after that, we look at the Ruthless Aggression era. Yeah, John Cena's it. You have an argument maybe for Triple H and Randy Orton, but John Cena's the catalyst of that era. Right now, the greatest of our generation right now is Roman Reigns, and it's not even close. Everyone talks about the bloodline these days. Nobody's talking about anything else. Unfortunately, Seth Rollins should be in the conversation, but because Roman Reigns has been put in the position that he's been put in, Seth Rollins doesn't even get a bite of the conversation when it comes to the greatest of a generation. If we want to talk about greatest wrestlers, yeah, okay. Now we're looking at the fact that Seth Rollins is one of this generation's greatest wrestlers, next to Will Ospreay. So it depends on how you categorize what the GOAT is. And really, there's no category that you can put together to have a significant winner. Would Bruno Sammartino last in this generation with the cinematics of sports entertainment like Roman Reigns can and the likes of John Cena? Would John Cena, as his hustle, loyalty, respect, and his 7 moves of doom, last in the 50s and 60s against Bruno Sammartino and what people wanted to see in that generation of just pure wrestling? Hulk Hogan right now with his Wheaties and vitamins and, you know, saying your prayers would not get over in this generation because some of the stuff that he's saying back then is now not politically correct and couldn't be said then or now. So the argument of who is the greatest of all time cannot actually ever be answered. The easier conversation is the Mount Rushmore, and even then, that conversation is just as difficult as the greatest of all time. I specifically sit here as an advocate for the conversation of the greatest of a generation, and I'll listen to that conversation all the time. But when you're sitting in a chat and you're sitting at a wrestling venue and someone walks up to you and say, "Hey, I got a question for you. Who's the greatest professional wrestler of all time?" There isn't one. It's just like arguing, is Maradona better than Messi? Well, no, because the game was different and it was a lot slower back then. The science to the game, the rules to the game, and the speed of the game is completely different now to what it was back then. So you look at all the aspects, and I think a lot of people miss what they're really talking about when they try and argue the GOAT conversation. And hell, I could be way off with this video, but it needs to be said, and I have waited a very long time to have this conversation. I would love to hear in the comments what you guys truly believe and who is the greatest of all time, because it's a very interesting topic that so many wrestling fans and sports entertainment fans demand to have and argue consistently on a daily basis about it. Is it Flair? Is it Bruno? Is it Cena? Is it Hogan? Is it Roman? There's arguments to be had for all these characters, but you need to have specific breakdown on what you believe greatest of all time means before you can actually start throwing names in. Because if you look at it, if you're looking at, okay, what have they accomplished and what they brought to the business? Yeah, okay, then you're looking at, you know, Hogan, Austin, Roman, Cena. If you're looking at wrestling types, you need to look at Bruno, you need to look at Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, you need to look at Savage, you need to look at Regal. You know, that's when it comes to wrestling. If you're looking at pure sports entertainment, you need to look at the guys that can do both. The Seth Rollins of the world, the, you know, Will Ospreays of the world. You need to look at, you know, Randy Orton. You need to look at Triple H, Undertaker. There are so many ways to have the GOAT conversation that I think at the end of the day, if you're a wrestling fan and you want to argue this, you're really just wasting your breath. I love a good conversation about professional wrestling, and I'll never turn away the conversation about the GOAT, but my stance on it will always be that there is no such thing. It's a generational talent, and that is all that it will ever be. Bruno will never step to Roman. Roman will never step to Hogan, and Cena will never step to Taker when what they did for the business and how they were in their career. But guys, like always, I hope you like, subscribe, and put the bell on for all notifications that are the MrTeshk Wrestling channel. Please let me know in the comments, do you agree with me? Is it generational talent, or is there a significant GOAT in professional wrestling? Who do you think is the greatest of all time? Guys, like always, be good people.